Hello.
Hey, buddy.
Hey.
We're already live. Although you and me aren't on the screen yet. But I think they can hear us, but I'm not sure they can.
Hey, what's that background about?
What background?
You're in a gladiatorial arena,
man.
maybe?
Yeah, that's left over from the D&D game. It's going away.
I was racking my brain. I was like, what?
You don't
Towering
remember the
Inferno. Yeah. Paul Newman and Steve McQueen were shirtless, and they each had...
about Spartacus or something.
Yeah. I am Maximus Decimus McQueenius.
I'm Paulus Numianus.
Oh,
Alright.
it's probably not professional to chew gum while we're recording.
Probably not, but, you know. We are not professional. I think that's our appeal.
Yeah. Okay.
There we go. Looking good. So, let's talk intro.
Yeah.
Because I don't have any ideas for this movie.
Guess I should turn off the audio. Intro. I mean, obviously we could be putting out a fire.
Yeah, I debated something like that. Like maybe put in a phone call or something.
Because you know telephones always work in an inferno.
Unless you purposefully shut them off. In which case they don't work so great. Speaking of which, I need to go get some water before I mess it up and forget to get some. I'll be right back.
Okay. Hello, anybody that's out there. Matt is taking a break. He's gone to get some water. In the meantime, how's it going? If you're new to the channel, this is the CinemaMen podcast where we record live. And this is kind of our pre-show where we awkwardly do stuff. Where, like, go get water breaks or a lot of long, awkward silences. And we figure out what we're going to do for a intro at the spur of the moment. Then we start the podcast. We record for about an hour and a half, hour and 45. Then we're done with that. And then we do our Cinemini, which is about 30 minutes. And it's a short form podcast that we release every week, every other week. There's a cat in the background.
Yes, that is Lucy. She is my companion cat. As you can see, she's very busy laying down. I've blurred the background so you can't see the lewd acts she performs back there. sometimes she licks her butt. It's vulgar.
Sometimes it must be done.
Sure about that?
I'm not a cat, so no, I don't know 100% sure, but
Okay, if you say so. All
I'm
right,
gonna
so
say,
what are we thinking? Like, this is awkward.
put it directly in front of your face.
Welcome. We've got video now, so everything should look much better. We should be a lot more appealing to everyone in terms of our content. I'm your behind the fence neighbor, Matt.
Ideo.
And I've got a boom today, which is great, except for the fact that it covers my face up. How does that? Does that sound pretty good?
It sounded really good when it was in front of your face.
How does it sound now, though? Does it sound okay?
Good.
Your,
Although
little audio
it
check.
looks like you have a halo over your head.
Yeah, I don't know. I could bring it down like that, but then when I lean back, I'm like, hey. No, Mr. Bond. I expect you to die.
Can it go further?
Check 1. Check 2. Check 3. Check 4. Check 1. Check 2. Check 3. Check 4. It sounds okay right there.
All right.
I'm hitting record now. And I'm recording our audio for the podcast, which is great. And it's slowly sinking down. Let me see what I can do about that. Don't be looking under my arms, y'all.
Too late.
That should be better. All right. La 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 la. I have a black circle in my frame, and it's beautiful. All right. This is much better.
Great.
I might have to rethink where I place my boom.
Here comes the boom.
You see this? You see this right here?
Mm-hmm.
This thing that's kind of blurry because of my background filter. This is my boomstick.
Love it.
Apologies. All right, let me try something different. Whoa. Uh-oh. I got the whole thing down now.
Loose boom.
Getting crazy. I'm gonna put it right here.
That's a good idea.
And it's not gonna work because I have a shelf here. So I'm gonna try it. It's not gonna work because there's a shelf here. Get it? You don't get it?
What?
You don't get it?
I didn't hear you.
I said I'm gonna put it a little lower. And I said I'm gonna put it a little lower.
Hmm.
This is why we do these raw, so that you guys can see how terribly amateur we are at what we do.
This is how we live our lives.
The demographics tend to say that this is endearing. So
Matt is a professional. Matt is a professional boom adjuster.
No.
This is what he does for a living.
That would clearly not be the case. My luck, I would get hired to do it and go straight on to Christian Bale. We all know how that would turn
Get cussed at.
out. Probably deservingly so. Alright. So I guess while we're doing this, I can discuss a little bit of feedback that I got on our last Cinemini.
Who was it from?
I didn't catch the name, but they left us a review, which was nice.
Bob Johnson.
Yes, it was Bob Johnson. Actually, I didn't actually get that person's name, and I don't want to put it on the podcast without them saying that's cool. But they had a suggestion for an actor with range that we did not mention.
Okay.
The actor is none other than Christian Bale. Us talking about him made me think of it.
Oh, yeah. He definitely... See, when I think of Bale, obviously he has range, but he's a method actor, and so he goes to the extreme whenever he portrays a role. And so that's more of what I think of him for, is his extreme methods for getting into character.
Extreme methods.
Losing 50 pounds, and it all back plus more to be Batman.
This should work.
Yeah, that's better.
Yeah. Okay. So, I'm recording my audio. We are live on YouTube. We need to think of an intro for the show. So, do you want to do, like, and with me as always, and then you could be like, wait, what is that? And then do you have a lighter? You could, like, hold a lighter up, and you could be like, fire! There's a fire! And then you could pick up your cell phone, and I'll, like, answer, and I'll be like the police or the fire chief, and I'll be like, I got a four alarm high rise coming up here. What do you need? And you're like, I got a podcast that needs doing. And I'll be like, I'll get right on it. Something stupid like that.
Yeah.
Look, I don't know. I'm coming up with these on the fly here.
I know, that's what we do.
What if I don't know. What if I was like, you're like, with me as always, Matt, and I'm like, oh, geez, it's awfully hot in here. I don't know if it's, what? Oh, my room's on fire. This is fine. Everything's fine. I know what I'll do. I'll shut off all my phones and hide in my room. That'll solve the problem.
Yeah, that's decent. It made me laugh anyway.
I think you would have to have seen the movie for that to be funny is the problem.
Sure. But I tell everybody when they start the
It's
episode,
true.
I tell everybody, follow along with us.
You do that.
I do that.
Mm-hmm. That joke stinks. You know, poop jokes, they're not my favorite, but they're a solid number 2.
Wow.
A solid number 2.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I need to pick. Did you get any more? Okay. I need to pick a movie for next time.
I thought you had.
Not really.
All right. Well, you've got time.
You've
got till the end of the podcast.
Yeah, I'm gonna surprise you.
All right.
You won't know what it is until I say it.
Debbie Does Dallas.
Whoa. I'll have to give you that one because you don't own it.
No, I don't. I don't. I might feel a little uncomfortable putting that on the Plex server.
I have the censored version. It's 2 minutes long.
Long but distinguished. All right. I guess I'm as ready as I'm going to be.
Okay.
I guess you could just like add like a crackling fire behind me or something, and then maybe fire alarms or something. Just make a cacophony of noise while I'm just like, oh, this is okay. This is fine.
Yep. I feel you. I got it.
All right.
All right. We need to sync up. 1, 2, 3.
Boop.
That was a burp.
A burp. All right. I guess I'm ready whenever you are.
Okay.
Everybody in the chat say, hey. Hey, we got one. Welcome. Glad you're here. Thanks for watching. We love all our viewers here.
Good gracious.
Oh. Hydration's important.
It is. Went with the leader this time.
Uh-oh. I just got a note that said no data. The stream will end shortly unless you restart it in your streaming software. Now it says excellent connection. Okay.
Okay.
We're going with it.
Very
We're good. Crisis averted. Thank you, Steve McQueen. Thank you, Paul Newman.
Okay. You said you're ready?
I guess so. As ready as I'm going to be. I mean, look at how on point I look right now. My hair's sticking up all over the place. Solid colored stretchy t-shirt on. I mean, how can you be more ready than this?
Huh?
This girl is on fire. Sorry.
That's very insensitive based on the movie that we were about to review. All right. Hey, welcome to the CinemaMen podcast. I'm your host, John Murphy, and I'm joined by my co-host, Matt Hurdle.
Hey, John. And
Hey.
It's man, it's hot in here. Is it hot to you? I mean, I know we're not in the same building, but I'm hot.
I'm pretty good.
I'm like
pretty cool, actually.
It's what? Oh, there's smoke coming through my door. Hold on, just let me go take a look at this.
Okay, you might want to check that out.
Oh dear. Let me close this door. Well, John, it would seem that my house is on fire.
Okay, well, that's the problem.
Yes. And I know just what to do. No need to fear. I'm upstairs. I don't have any way to easily get out of my house, so I'm going to stay in my room. I'm going to put towels on the door so the smoke doesn't get in, and I'm going to cut all the phone lines. Yep, this is fine.
Okay.
Everything's fine.
Did you say cut the phone lines?
Yeah. Yeah. I saw this movie where that was what a guy did,
Uh-huh.
and actually it didn't work out too great for him. But for me, it's going to work. I
Because
saw it in a movie.
you, yes, because you saw it in a movie.
Oh, it's getting a little worse now. That's okay.
Are you going to try to wrap yourself in wet towels and just run through because you can run 100 meters in 10 minutes?
Um, no, no. I think
Okay.
I'm just going to sit here. It'll be okay. This is a modern building with lots of safety features.
All right. Well, let me know how that goes.
I will. I'll let you know.
So, besides Matt's peril, on tonight's episode, we are going to be reviewing the 1974 action thriller, The Towering Inferno, starring Steve McQueen and Paul Newman, directed by John Gillerman, and also Irwin Allen. This is a spoiler podcast. So if you've never seen the movie and you don't want to be spoiled, pause this episode, go watch the movie, and then come back. Stay tuned until the end of the episode where we reveal what our next movie will be so you can follow along with us.
Oh,
If
John.
you want to get in touch,
John,
what?
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
No, go ahead.
some guys just busted into my door and they told me that they're going to have to blow the water tanks over my head and that I need to tie
Yeah?
down. So I'm going to do that real quick.
Okay. Make sure you do a good job. If you want to get in touch with us or give us your take on a movie, you can email us at feedback@cinemamenpodcast.com or check us out on Twitter at twitter.com/cinemamenpod. If you would like to support us monetarily and have the means to do so, you can go to anchor.fm/cinemamenpodcast/support. We use the money to improve the quality of the podcast, so in advance, thank you very much. And we might use some of that money to improve Matt's home because apparently it's easily caught on fire.
You know, this fireman that came in here, he looks a whole lot like Steve McQueen. It's kind of cool. Oh,
Oh,
they're
you
about
should
to
get his
blow.
autograph.
Here we go. All right, there we go. Now we can get
I
that
have an
thing on
idea
there.
for a soundbite there.
Yeah, I thought you might. So you can have fun with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you like video, hey, we offer that too. Go to YouTube. Search for the CinemaMen podcast. We record every other Tuesday at 8:30 p.m. Central Time. Subscribe to our channel. That's the easiest way to keep track of us with regards to that.
That's right. And honestly, why would you not want to see our faces? I can probably think of several reasons, but I can think of a reason probably why
Yeah.
you would watch instead of listen.
You can?
No,
Okay.
but we're there anyway.
Yeah, that's where we are.
I got it. If you come to our live shows, you can chat with us directly. Yeah.
That's a
You
good
can't do
point.
that on a podcast. You're just talking to yourself,
Yeah.
and people think you look crazy.
And it has been known for us to reply or respond on the podcast to our listeners.
It has been
And it makes
known.
it it makes it into
We
the episode.
We just might address your comments
Legend foretells.
if you're lucky. No, in all honesty, he's right. Come in here, chat with us. We'll talk. We don't care.
Yep. Sorry. Turning off my phone. All right. One more thing. This is something relatively new we've been doing, but we have been creating a short form series called the Cineminis. And we release those every other week when we don't release a regular podcast episode. They're about 30 minutes or less in time, and we discuss fairly random topics, but we try to make it relatable to the episode that we just released, just to keep things kind of, I don't know, on topic.
Stay on target.
Yeah. The last episode we released was, what was that, Matt?
The last
The
episode?
The last Cinemini we did.
The last Cinemini. That was Tom Cruise, if I'm not
That's
mistaken.
right. Yep. Some of our favorite or the top best, most popular Tom Cruise movies. So check that out. All right, let's get started. The plot synopsis for The Towering Inferno from IMDb.com. At the opening party of a colossal but poorly constructed office building, a massive fire breaks out that threatens to destroy the tower and everyone in it. Bom, bom, bom.
Yep, that's pretty much what goes down.
Yep.
I mean, you could argue that it wasn't necessarily poorly constructed. It was
Corners were cut.
with the electrical of the
Yes.
building. The construction itself, I guess, was pretty solid, but the electricity setup was weak. They didn't even
Weak
cover
sauce.
the wires with protective sheaths. Sheaths?
How dare they?
Sheaths?
Sheaths.
Is it sheaths or sheaths?
Sheaths.
Bringing in the sheaths?
Good.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Matt.
Yes.
Well, let's start with the acting, I guess.
Okay.
This has I would say, I don't know. One would say an all-star cast, but an all-star cast from a bygone era, maybe.
Yeah, that's true.
In our case.
But
So-
it's important to note this cast is fire. If you'll excuse the pun. I mean, first of all, you've got three really big people competing for the top build spot. You got William Holden, you've got Steve McQueen, and you've got Paul Newman. All three of these guys are legends. Now, John's right. Today, they're not as much as they were, but you're talking about the biggest A-list actors that were in the business at this time frame. And having, in particular, Steve McQueen and Paul Newman head-to-head in the same film, this was kind of like Heat, our very first episode, when Pacino and De Niro were squaring off in the same screen, sharing screen time and talking. Like, this was a big deal.
That's true. Indeed. And the chemistry between those two.
Yeah.
They weren't on screen very often, but when they were, like, you could tell it was just two veteran actors playing off of each other.
Oh, yeah. Two pros. Some of the best in the business working together. It's so great when you get to see that.
Yeah. So Steve McQueen plays the architect. He is the guy that built this building, or at least blueprinted it. And did I say Steve McQueen?
Yes, you did, I think.
Sorry, Steve McQueen. Yeah, Paul Newman is the architect. Steve McQueen is he's the fire chief.
Correct.
But besides those two, and William Holden was the builder or the owner / builder of the big glass tower, this big building that is taller than any other building in the world.
It was the tallest building in the world, in San Francisco.
Mm-hmm. But not only those three, you have Fred Astaire,
another Hollywood legend,
Faye Dunaway, Robert Wagner. Who else?
O.J. Simpson.
O.J. Simpson, Felton Perry, Jackie Collins, Susan Blakely.
These are all older names, but these are all huge names, except for O.J., who's still relevant, but for different reasons than acting nowadays.
He's relevant for different reasons.
Although he's kind of had his time. He's kind of fading away now, I think.
You know what, though? O.J. didn't do a bad job.
No, O.J. did great. Everybody did great.
He had a very tiny part, but he acted his role pretty well.
And just to throw this out there for those of you who haven't seen this film, the premise is pretty simple. The movie opens with this tower about to be opened. It's the biggest building ever built in the world. As John was saying, Paul Newman, he plays the architect, a character by the name of Doug Roberts, who's just getting in for the opening. He's been on a long vacation. William Holden plays Jim Duncan. He's the guy who financed the project and had the building built and essentially owns the building. And what happened was he had the building built, but he needed to save a little bit of money. And so he turned to his electrician, who was played by Richard Chamberlain, a character by the name of Simmons, to cut some corners. And so he did so, but he did so in a hazardous way. And so what happened is on the night of the opening of the building, they throw a really big party. They take like 100 people up to the pretty much very top floor to this place called the Promenade. It's not exactly the top floor, but it's like one or two floors down. So like 130 floors in the air. And they turn on all the lights because they want to showcase the building. Well, when you turn on all the lights and the electricity's bad, the whole circuitry overloaded. It caused some fires, which quickly spread and got out of control. And the rest of the movie is the fire department with the chief, played by Steve McQueen, Chief O'Halloran, and his firefighters trying to save the people and stop the fire. I mean, that's pretty much
Correct.
the whole movie.
Yep. So, what is your general thought of the acting, other than the fact that it was star-studded?
I loved it. I thought every performance was great. There was a little bit of overacting, I felt, and some stuff that kind of suffered, such as, and you're going to have to help me out here, but the lady who died in the room.
Susan Flannery
Yeah, I think that's who it
played
was.
Lori.
Patty. Or, yeah, I'm sorry, Lori. I think that's who it
Yep.
was, but I'm not certain.
Hmm.
That was that was a little to me, because she's just kind of standing there, and then fire appears, and then she goes That was a little weak. So not everybody had an amazing performance, but I want to say generally it was pretty good acting. Where it mattered, you had good acting, and I mean you're talking about 74. So you have to give a little bit of lenience to some of this acting, just because it was, it was a different era, and it wasn't as critiqued, I guess, as it is now. Although I say that now, we
Well,
sit critiquing it.
no, I don't think it's that. I think it's like you can critique it, and some of the acting is not good, but it's more of a classic delivery
Yeah,
of lines and things like that. Like,
yeah, that's a good way to put it.
yeah, like you can picture what this movie would be like if it was made today. Like, it would be a lot more real, a lot more uh, maybe sensitive subject matter. Who
Hmm.
knows? Like,
And
everything was classic. Like,
it's interesting that you say that. I think it's a good point that you're making, because now that you say that, I can clearly define some acting as classical, and some that would transpose onto today's cinema just fine.
sure. Yeah.
Namely, Newman and McQueen. They did great. They were
Mm-hmm.
believable, and I was into the action, and I thought they were just outstanding. Um, Holden was amazing in his performance also, but OJ as we mentioned. But yeah, sorry, I keep mentioning actors, but there was a line there, yeah, and I think that's exactly right. I think I saw that line in that scene, and that's maybe why I'm like, but also,
Yeah.
And something else I want to touch on with that line, and that's Fred Astaire. He's a joy to watch act, but if
Mm-hmm.
you watch him act, he is so ridiculously overacting.
Mm-hmm.
Like he makes these ridiculous gestures and faces, and he's always like winking or nudging or leaning in and acting, definitely in a classical way as opposed to a modern way. But the way he does it
Yeah.
is extremely endearing, and he's older in this film, and so you can almost pass it off as him just being an older guy, and it works
Yeah.
with him. Of course, he didn't have to die a fiery death, so
That's right.
if he did, that may have changed my opinion.
Yeah, he was an interesting character because he, I guess he's supposed to be this like con man. Um,
Hmm.
and the first time we see him, he's trying to swindle a taxi driver out of his tip or whatever. Um, but he moves so youthfully
Yeah.
than what I would expect. But then I'm like, oh, it's Fred Astaire.
Hmm.
And I almost expected him to have a real big dance number, to be honest. But there was a little bit of a dancing going on. Uh, but he was pretty agile for as old as
And
he was.
that's a theme that kind of runs throughout this entire film. There were some stuff that Paul Newman did where I was like, "Holy crap!" Like he would just
Yeah,
like be hanging
climbing
and
up a
pull himself up into a hole, or like swinging and jumping on poles and stuff. Like this had
yeah.
to be a pretty. I know they used a lot of stuntmen, but some of these were actually the actors doing these things.
Hmm.
And granted, they weren't actually 100 floors in the air doing them, but nonetheless, it's pretty physical. And
Hmm.
a lot of these guys who are older actors now just nail it, no problem.
Yeah,
I was
yeah. And
impressed.
the when you think about it, the top three build guys were probably at least over 40 or 45.
Yeah,
Um, and which is crazy to think. Paul Newman still has a long, legendary career ahead of him,
I think
but
Newman was 42 or 43 when he filmed
yeah,
this, but I'm not certain on that.
but he still has a lot of good movies he's going to make in the future.
Hmm.
Um, it's crazy to think about that. Um, yeah, and I mean, who else? Richard Chamberlain
Hmm.
plays the snivelly electrician.
Do you
I guess
mean
that's his
Benedict
role.
Cumberbatch? Because I swear
Yeah,
that's the only person I could think of when I was watching him. He looks just like him
yeah,
in this movie.
they do look similar. But he's great as this like the guy you just love to hate,
Hmm. Yeah,
the
he
guy
played a
that
good
has
bad guy.
he does everything wrong. He can't do anything right. He doesn't have any good qualities other than he's handsome, I guess.
Well, he did manage to save, William Holden's budget. you know, Maybe not in the
If
best
we're
way,
looking at
but
it
I mean, he did it. He cut that $2 million off the budget
if we're looking at it from a
by
financial
installing
perspective,
bare wires.
I did what you told me to do.
And
Yeah,
honestly,
so
he acted his heart out too. He did amazing in
no,
this
he was great.
also.
The only thing I know Richard Chamberlain from, other than this movie now, is like the Thornbirds,
Oh yeah.
which is this romance kind of movie that my mom always watched.
That's funny you say that because I grew up in the VHS era,
Right.
and we had a whole cabinet filled with VHS tapes that were almost entirely tapes we had taped off of TV.
Mm-hmm.
Which that's what you did, just like you made your tapes off of the radio with your cassette tapes. You would record
Right.
TV shows on your VCR,
Mm-hmm.
and she had the entire Thornbird series on VHS tapes, and I would always look at them as a little kid and be like, I wonder what that is. And then I accidentally taped over them with like Ninja Turtles or something, so I never got to find out.
I just remember he's a priest, maybe, or some
I have
Catholic
no
priest.
idea. I know my mom
I don't
liked
know.
it too, though. The
Yeah.
Thornbirds, it's for moms.
TM. Uh, but Richard Chamberlain, he was a heartthrob.
Hmm.
I assume that's why my mom watched it.
She liked old Dick Chamberlain.
Yep.
Can't blame her.
Uh,
Your mom loves the
can't
Dick.
blame her. Can't blame her.
I'm sorry. I apologize. I might have gone too far with that one, but sometimes you just
My
can't hold
mom
them in.
listens to all of these episodes.
Well,
No,
it's an
she
innocent
doesn't.
statement.
Is there any other actor that you wanted to call out that we haven't talked
O.J.
about?
Simpson,
Oh,
we've already mentioned him, but he was really young here. I don't know how much acting he'd
Yeah.
done previous to this, but honestly, he did really well. He was believable as the main security guard. The
Hmm.
action that he took was great. He was Jernigan, was his character's name. And honestly, I
Jernigan.
really enjoyed watching him. This was one of the first times I've seen him in a serious role, and he
Yeah.
really did well.
He saves a cat.
He did save the cat, and this is more of a plot issue, so I'll get into that later. But I do have an issue
Okay.
with that.
Okay. Um, I thought Robert Wagner did a decent job. He didn't have
Oh, he was
a
great.
lot,
Yeah,
uh, but his
he plays a good number two.
yeah, his role as the upstanding man who wants to protect his lady, he did that well.
Mm-hmm.
Although he can't run very well, and he makes poor decisions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, Felton Perry, I'll talk about him more, but he played one of the firemen. He was the fireman that was there at the end in the promenade helping with
Uh,
the uh, breaches buoy.
so not the younger one who was afraid to climb down or
Yes,
rappel down. That one.
the guy that was in RoboCop.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
he did great.
yeah. I really enjoyed his performance, and I'll talk about why later on in another section.
Actually, the both of those guys I thought did really well.
Yeah. So we overall like the plot or the acting. Sorry.
Oh yeah, yeah. I definitely think it has to be noted that it's kind of a mix of more modern acting and classical acting. But aside from that, yeah, it was great. No
I
complaints.
agree. I think we're on the same page. So the plot.
Mm-hmm. The
You
plot.
kind of synopsisized the plot
Yeah, I
already.
mean, so
But
it's it's standard disaster movie flair plot. You know,
mhm,
there's a brief setup where everything's cool and happy, and we're seeing these people, and we're shown little glimpses so that we can get a little bit attached to each of the characters, and then all hell breaks loose, and they have to all try to survive, and we're cheering for them to make it. I mean, that's every disaster movie ever made.
yeah,
Um, so I mean, it's not the strongest plot in the world, but you don't watch a disaster movie for a super intriguing, amazing, dramatic, award-winning screenplay and plot, right?
hmm,
You're in it for the action. So,
hmm.
um, you know, you can't judge it too harshly, I don't think, because of that.
I didn't, I didn't mind the plot necessarily. I think as far as runtime goes, this is a almost 3 hour movie,
Mm.
so it's a long movie.
Yep.
And the first half, or not first half, first quarter or first third is just set up.
Mm-hmm.
So you're and that's good because we're establishing these characters, we're getting familiar with them, we're developing attachments to them, and we're figuring out what's going to happen. Um, so that was good, and I like that. Uh, some of it probably could have been trimmed, but I can't think of anything necessarily that just absolutely would have to be cut to make it a more tight movie.
Mm-hmm.
I really liked the characters, and I like the way they set them up.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm not saying it's a bad plot. I'm just saying it's a pretty simple plot. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's a formula disaster movie plot.
it
Um,
is.
there's
But
nothing really. What's the word I'm looking for? Um,
unique.
yeah, but not really unique because in a lot of ways this was one of the founders of the formula. You know, innovative.
Yeah.
That's the word I'm looking for.
Okay.
They don't waver too much from the formula.
That's what I was gonna say is this was 1974, and so there wasn't much to go off of. This kind of created that. So in a way, it was innovative in
That's true.
developing that disaster
That's
movie
really true.
formula. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we can say this was the first disaster movie.
No, not
Because
by a long stretch.
in '70s there was a huge outbreak of disaster movies. Um, it was a big deal, and this was just kind of one of the jewels in the crown of that era. And I don't know honestly what would be considered the first, but it's definitely a shining example of one.
Yeah. The movie kind of touches on these five romance romance angles,
Mm-hmm.
which is something that they don't really overload you with. They don't linger on it, but they give you enough of those to give you that attachment.
Yes.
So we have Robert Wagner and his assistant Lori,
Mm-hmm.
Paul Newman, who was Doug Roberts, and his wife, played by Faye Dunaway,
Mm-hmm.
Fred Astaire and his companion
Hook up.
or hookup,
He hooks up with her at the party.
yeah, Lisa Lett,
Mm-hmm.
I guess is her name. And then we have Richard Chamberlain and Duncan, who's the builder, his daughter,
Mm-hmm.
Patty, and then the mayor and his wife.
Yes.
And those are the five separate romances. And you kind of see they're all different and they're all in one way or another relatable, I would say.
They're well
You,
done,
you know,
I would think. I
yeah.
think, yeah, they were. They didn't ever at any point dominate the plot. They were just
Hmm.
there, and it makes you empathize with the characters more. You know, knowing that they're worried about their loved ones, which is exactly what you would expect in something like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought
But
they
I
were a
really
good
like
addition.
yeah, I love the variety though. You've got a, a younger wife and husband.
Mm-hmm.
You have the assistant and that's probably a taboo affair, Robert Wagner and his assistant.
Yeah, he's keeping that
You
awfully
got,
secret. That's kind of
hmm
interesting.
and she mentions before they die, or she's like, I won't ever be able to, or the upside is I won't be able to ever tell anybody about us or something, or no
Mm-hmm.
one's ever going to find out about us. Then you have Fred Astaire and his lady. That's the older hookup, as Matt
Mm-hmm.
said. Um, and then you've got the dysfunctional relationship with Richard Chamberlain and Duncan's daughter.
Man, they really
And
make him
then
out to be a jerk too, don't they?
yeah, and
He's
that's
like
that's actually
sorry, but the fire department, they come into the room and they're like, "You can't go down there; it's impassable." And he's like, "I'm going. Are you coming?" And she's like, "No, they said that you can't go down there." And he's like, "Well, if you need permission to save your own life, see you later." And then he just leaves, and I'm like, "Okay." And then of course the freaking stairs blow up while he's in there, and he comes back and he's burned and in tatters, and he's like, "Hey." And then she runs up and is like, "Oh, I missed you," and I'm just like, that's a one-sided relationship if ever I've
yeah.
seen one.
The only downside or ding I have as far as that is that he is completely irredeemable. Like he does nothing in the movie that is a good thing. He doesn't.
Yeah,
He is completely one-dimensionally bad.
they make him out to be pretty Weasley, and I guess they just do that so that you're not sad that everybody gets it. You know, when he gets it, you're like, yeah, but everybody else, you're like, oh no.
Yeah, it's kind of like and this movie made me think of it, but Titanic.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the what was his name?
Yeah,
Darn it.
the fiance, the one that
Yes.
Rose is engaged to. Yeah, how
Hmm.
he's kind of
He pushes his way onto the
snotty
boat.
and yeah, it's actually a very similar scene when he's trying to
Yeah.
get on that little chair. I forget what they called that, but
The breeches buoy.
yeah, that.
Yeah. Yeah, this movie made me think of Titanic. Of course, this came first, so I assume maybe James Cameron took some ideas from Towering
Mm-hmm.
Inferno. Um, and then the mayor and his wife are kind of the older, established couple.
Yep.
Hold on one second.
No problem.
What do you need?
This is what happens when we
Your
do
eye
it
hurts.
live. Every once in a while, we have kids that have to
What's
show
wrong
up.
with your eye? Stay right there. Let me get.
You're fine. Hey, you might want to mute. Mute. I don't think he heard me. But anyway, yeah, this movie, y'all. I'm gonna go ahead and let y'all know. I am a bit of a sucker for disaster movies. I eat them up, even the bad ones I like. This is one of the greats. This is one of the best disaster movies I've ever seen. And I highly recommend that you guys check it out. Please don't be put off by the fact that it was made in '74, because it doesn't matter. This is, without question, one of the tensest movies I've ever seen. It grabs you at the beginning of the show, and it doesn't let you go for like 2 hours. I was exhausted when it was over. So definitely want to recommend that. And I'll say all this again later whenever we get to that part of our review and just talking about it. But while we were waiting, I just wanted to sneak that out in case anyone was listening. All right, welcome back.
All right. I don't know what you said, but it was great.
I was just hyping the movie up.
Yeah. The other thing I like that they did was the use of children.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's a weird thing to say.
I know.
But I get what you mean.
Putting them in peril adds a level of suspense
Always
to the movie
does.
that I didn't necessarily enjoy, but I get it. Like
it takes it up a notch anytime there's a kid involved. And you know, sure. I have to mention the scene where they're climbing down the stairs after the stairs blow up. That is one of the tensest scenes in the movie. And the worst part to me was when the boy says that he's going to do it on his, like, he thinks he can make it, and he just starts climbing down all by himself. Yeah. Oh my gosh, my heart was beating so fast during that scene, and I couldn't help but put myself in the shoes of that woman watching. Essentially, I guess was that her grandchild, or was that a child she was watching, or was she just a neighbor? I think she may have. I
never got a good sense. Yeah, maybe a good sense of what her relationship was.
We're gonna say she was a neighbor. And so these kids have a deaf mother, and they are already moved into the tower. Some people had moved into this tower, which had residential areas, but for the most part, it was unoccupied because it had just opened. And so she went to check on this deaf lady. O.J. Simpson saw her on the camera, or knew that they were up there, so ran up there, saw her, went in. There was this whole thing, but the mom winds up getting carried out by OJ because she's unconscious. And what happens then is the fire kicks up behind OJ, and you've then got Paul Newman, the architect, or Doug, left behind with this neighbor lady who ran to get their attention, and the two kids. There's a little girl and a little boy. So they try to make it down the stairwell when there's an explosion. The stairwell blows up, and they have to climb over essentially a sheer drop of like 6 stories down to more stairs, and it's super tense.
So the only other things I wanted to mention was that I thought the catalyst for the whole disaster starting was a little convenient, and
it was a little hokey.
Yeah.
Let's just come out and say it.
Yeah. So a breaker box shoots open and sparks come out of it, and lo and behold, what's below it is a bunch of gasoline and I guess paper towels
spray
or towels
paint
with
and rags
soaked in
in the utility closet. Yeah, what happens is 2 things blow at the same time. There's a breaker box that's in this main room where the engineers are, and then there's a breaker box in a closet that blows and starts a fire. The security system picks up on the sensor that there's a fire, so they go down to check it out, and they wind up thinking that original breaker box blowing was the fire, so they cancel the alarm and just think the system's glitching out, which is how the fire spreads and takes off. Here's my problem with that. It's a fine premise. I get it. That makes sense. I can see that happening, right? That's not my problem. My problem was the fire in that utility closet gets started at like lunchtime.
Mm-hmm.
And we see it every once in a while. The camera cuts to it, and it's just like a little fire, like these little rags are just burning. And they burn until the party at like 8. and then I guess they take over. Like it's
Yeah.
very confusing because you've got an open fire in this gas room with spray paint and everything flammable in the world in it. It looks like a powder room in a ship's hold in an
Yeah.
old pirate movie.
Uh-huh.
And it just burns for 6 hours. The rags don't burn up, nothing happens. It just burns. And then after the party starts, it starts getting crazy.
Yeah.
That was one thing that did bother me.
100% agree that the the convenience of how it's everything kick-started bothered me, and then the fact that the fire took forever to get out of that one room.
And I tell
And
you, there's another part to that too. And I think
okay,
we have to read between the lines to get to it. And I'm sorry, I just interrupted you.
no, that's all
Sometimes
I wanted to
thoughts
say. Go ahead.
pop into my head and I just go with them, so I apologize. But if you look at various points through the movie, you see fires happening on different floors. Now, logically, the fire is going to follow one path. You're not going to have a fire here and then 4 floors down, another one breaks out randomly. It's going to move between floors.
That's right. Hmm.
So I think we have to extrapolate from that there were multiple fires in the building that we didn't know about. That's the only way it makes sense to me. That the
Yeah,
electrical system caused extra fires and we just didn't see them happen.
no, I agree with you, but I guess the one fire they were focusing on, which is the one that we originally saw, didn't move out of
Mm-mm.
that room and didn't even start smoking, or at least they didn't notice the smoke for a long time.
Yeah.
And it was a good, like, after the second shot of the fire, it looks like it's a good fire. Like
Yeah.
it's gonna make some movement.
Which, I mean,
And
they
it just
explain it a little bit because the sprinkler systems and the fire alarms weren't active yet. They said that.
right.
But at the same time, like you would think the fire would just burn itself out,
Yeah.
or
Or at the
spread and get
very
out of
least,
control.
yeah, that's what I was expecting is we got a fire here. It's not a small fire, and so within an hour it should be engulfing like the entire room and multiple rooms, and
Yeah.
so it was weird.
Yeah. They took their
But
time with that one.
yeah, they were. It could have been a 3.5 hour movie. I assume they cut stuff
Yeah.
to make it shorter. So
And they did
all
do a
right.
good job of covering this, though. The fire does stay pretty well contained until
Hmm.
that one guy opens the door and we get the whole backdraft set up. The air rushes into the room and it kind of explodes out. And
Yeah.
that's when things really start getting crazy. So it's cool that they did that, but that also makes it weird, right? Because why would they pay like backdraft attention, but then not the fact that this fire is just sitting on some rags for 4 hours or longer?
Yeah.
That
I
was
don't know.
odd. Not causing smoke that anybody notices. It was
Yeah.
definitely odd. And I mean, I'm no fireman. Maybe that happens, but it sure seemed unbelievable.
Yeah.
Oh,
I,
also, sorry, I did it again, John. Go ahead, finish your
I
point.
wasn't. I wasn't gonna say anything. I
Oh,
was just
okay.
gonna say that. Yeah.
Um,
Go ahead.
I do want to point out that something I thought was interesting is right when the opening credits start to roll, we get a full color screen dedicating this movie to firemen across
Hmm.
the world, and I thought that was super cool. One, it's the earliest movie I can think of that has a dedication like that, and two, even in modern movies, typically you see that dedication at the end of the film before the credits roll. This was right up front. They're like, "This movie is about firefighters. You guys are awesome. Thank you for doing this for us." I
Hmm.
thought that was super cool.
Yeah. Oh, that reminds me that yes, I wanted to make sure that I said that I thought this movie it felt like a public service announcement with that opening thing and then the ending statement that Steve McQueen says
Hmm.
about you should contact us the next time you want to build a building
Oh,
and
that was a great line too. All right,
yeah,
I'm asking.
yeah,
That was
you know where
great.
I am or something like
Oh, it was
that.
so
Yeah.
good.
So
It
it felt
was,
like
yeah.
the movie was trying to preach, or not, it wasn't preachy, but it was trying to communicate the message of, these high-rise buildings, they aren't built the way they should be built to prevent potential fire hazards, and the firemen should be consulted whenever these high-rise buildings are built,
Yeah.
basically.
There's a big scene where he's like, I built it to code. McQueen or Paul Newman, Doug, he was like, to code, to code. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
But yeah, in this movie, the firefighters are the real heroes, just like in real
Mm-hmm.
life. And anyone
Yep.
out there who is a firefighter or who has loved ones who are firefighters, this movie is a really good homage to them. Although watch
Yep.
this with caution because they do get injured and killed in this film.
Yeah. Which is that's
That's
something
how
that
it is,
happens.
yeah.
And
But
yeah.
if you're a loved one whose significant other or child or parent is a fireman or woman and goes into these situations, that might cause you some anxiety. So you probably already
Yeah.
know that going into a movie called The Towering Inferno. But in case you don't, you should know
Yeah.
that while they're the heroes, they do get hurt.
Mhm. All right. I think we thought the plot was good.
It was good.
Like it.
Good for a disaster movie.
Yeah. Okay. Art direction and cinematography. So art direction is set design, overall visual appearance of the movie. Cinematography is the camera work. So cinematography.
Outstanding. There were some amazing sweeping shots. I remember one in particular where we're outside the promenade looking in and kind of orbiting the building, looking in on the party. That was just great. So many great shots of, just fires everywhere. This is going to bleed into visual effects, so I got to be kind of careful here, but just great all around. I was never confused, despite the fact that it was chaos everywhere. I could tell what was going on. I could follow what was happening. The
Mm-hmm.
scenes were well shot and well shown to us. And I have to imagine it's really hard to do that adequately when you've got fire everywhere, screwing with your light sources. So, I mean, the fire has to become your light sources, and which means that you have to design exactly where the fires are on these sets. That has to be incredibly difficult.
Mm-hmm.
I can't imagine the work and research that had to go into building these sets. I know a lot of the fire was piped gas, but you have to know where to pipe it so that it looks good, it's in the shot, and your actors can safely move past it and interact. Well done, super well done.
Mm-hmm. Um, I have the same critique that you had about the plot, I guess. Like the camera work wasn't necessarily inventive,
Hmm.
but the camera work was done in such a way, in a classic way. So everything, like you said, made sense. You weren't confused about what you were seeing.
Yeah.
So I give it credit for that. And for sure the exterior shots with the helicopters and the shots of the building itself up high was good.
And see,
Um,
this is where, and I say we're kind of bleeding into visual effects, but you kind of have to an extent here with this movie. This movie has no digital effects other than maybe some blue or green screen stuff in it. And so the buildings that we're looking at are scale models that they created. They're not, they obviously didn't build a 200 floor skyscraper in San Francisco.
mhm.
And so some of the shots, in order to get them like they need to be, you have to position the camera and film the scene with forced perspective so that while you're looking at a 35-foot model tower, it looks like you're actually looking at a giant skyscraper. And so you have to take that into account in movies like this.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's why we kind of lump in art direction and cinematography, because sometimes it does bleed over.
Mm-hmm.
But set design for sure, like you said, the scale model building, the camera position on those, the visual appearance of the building before, during, and after the fire, all of that stuff was great.
Good use of matte
Um,
paintings,
yes. Um,
backdrops, whatever you want to call them.
mhm. The the tower had kind of this futuristic look because it had just had knobs and switches and stuff in the control rooms.
Yeah,
Like
those were great
looks
looking.
like looked like something out of like Star Trek.
Yeah, but it was all thought
Um,
out, right? Like the
yeah,
the things that they showed us had purpose, and we saw them acting to that purpose, which I have to give respect for. They weren't just Star Trek do gadgets that do whatever. They said these are the main breakers for these sets of these power grids and these floors, and this is the generator. Like they actually point out what the stuff is, and that's really cool.
yeah. The only part that I was just like, this is too much was when OJ Simpson was at the controls and all the lights were blinking
Oh yeah, he's
like
restarting
Christmas
them.
lights. And he was just switching them on and off, and they weren't doing anything. And I was like, I have no idea what any of this
I
stuff
mean,
is
here's the deal, though. I
for.
mean, that was analog technology. That wasn't
Yeah,
run by computers like it would be today. So
right.
in theory, you could just turn it off and on, and it would just start right back up. Because it's
Hmm.
literally just electrical connections.
Yep, it wasn't working though. But yeah, lots of attention to detail. Um, we already mentioned the sense of scale, but just they had some wide shots of other skyscrapers in the city,
Hmm.
and then they had the glass
Which
tower,
they
and
were,
it was
you could tell obviously that they were fake. The glass tower
yes.
and the building that they repelled onto.
Hmm. Yeah,
But
some
you
of
got
the
to give it a
stuff was
pass. It's
yeah.
74. You give it a pass.
There weren't many scenes though. Like
Mm-mm.
those things you mentioned were the one that, and there was a few instances of smoke that I could tell they were using like a smoke machine,
You're right.
and they were just blowing it in front of the camera. Uh, but the f- maybe we should just move into visual effects because
Well, there's one more thing I want to talk about with art direction.
okay,
I want to
go
talk
ahead.
about Doug's office.
Okay,
Did you notice, like, it was all yellow and orange?
yeah,
Like the whole opening of the movie, when he comes in and he goes to his office. First of all, they have the most amazing offices I've ever seen in my life in this movie.
yeah,
They've got like, they're not offices, they're suites with rooms and everything.
pretty
But
fantastic.
I thought this was interesting because, Doug, the architect, his office is done entirely in like yellows and oranges. He's wearing an orange shirt.
Mhm.
And later on, that room burns. What color's fire,
Mhm.
John?
Yellow, red, orange.
Yeah, it's the same color scheme. And I got to wondering, I wonder if that was intentional or if that was just a cool looking color scheme in the 70s.
Maybe so. I mean, probably both, but there were some things like the motto for
Oh, yeah.
Duncan Enterprises.
There were definitely
It was
illusions.
"We build for life."
And then
Obviously not.
the song, the original song that she sings in the promenade, the candle in the dark. I was like, oh, the
Yeah.
candle's the
So
building. It's going up in flames,
I
showing
love
us
that stuff.
the way
Yep.
being talk to firefighters before you build skyscrapers, maybe.
Yeah. All those things were awesome. Um, anything else in art direction
That's
and
it.
cinematography? Okay.
We are dallying.
Dillying even?
Our bush beating needs to stop, and we need to move forward.
Yeah. Visual effects. Okay, this is where we want to talk about the fire, and it's some of the best
It's so
fire
good.
effects I've seen in a movie.
Oh, it's so
I
good,
mean, I w-
and it's all
I don't know.
practical.
Yeah, maybe you've done your research on this, Matt. I don't know, but were actual firefighters brought in to do some of
Yes.
the firefighting? Okay,
Most of the firefighters you see are actual volunteer firefighters who stepped in to be in the movie.
yeah,
Um, I don't remember the numbers. I read them and looked them up, but let's say, I don't know how many sets they actually constructed, but when they were done, they had utterly destroyed, and burned down all but two of them. just in the making of the film. That's how intense these fire effects were. They literally were burning up their own sets while they were filming the scenes with the fire. And
Yeah.
it is intense and crazy and real feeling, and oh boy, it's something to see.
Yeah. Yeah, they went all out on it, and it shows, and the movie is better for it because you really get that sense of like I'm pretty certain I was getting warm while watching the movie because
Mm-hmm.
I was into the movie so much that I was like, it's kind of getting warm in here.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was great.
It
And
man,
kudos to the actors and everybody that was around that stuff. And yeah,
the
cannot be easy to act.
I also want to mention the big climactic end scene where they blow the water tanks.
Hmm.
What a scene that was. You've got
Hmm.
fire, you've got and it's not explosions, it's just gusts of fire like you would expect in a building fire. You've got water flooding in, just sweeping everything away. Uh, Actors, like roped in, tying themselves in, and this flood of water and this erupting fire just wow, what a scene, man. I cannot imagine how you coordinated that, but it is incredible. And for those of you who may remember this, there used to be a like a backlot tour, and I think Universal had something similar to this. But there were rides you could go on. Both Universal and Disney, I think, had one where you
Hmm.
go into a canyon and like usually like a tanker truck or something catches on fire, and then a big flood comes and washes it away. Like that had to have been inspired by this movie and disaster movies of this era because it felt like I was in that. It was crazy.
Oh,
There's building crumbling, rock falling, statues falling, water rushing everywhere, fire flying up. It is one of the craziest things I've ever seen.
yeah, and you. This should be noted is there are several large action set pieces in this movie. Um, well, should we talk about action in its own category? I didn't have this down.
I mean, it doesn't matter. We can do it now. That's fine.
Yeah. There are several large action set pieces in this movie, and you see one and you're like, how are they going to top that? And then they top it, and then you're like, well, they can't top that. And then they top it. And it's like they know how to dole out that action and give you increasingly more harrowing and thrilling things until you get to the very end of the movie. And
Mm-hmm.
thought that was really well done.
And I've got to say there's a couple of scenes that really took me by surprise and I didn't expect. The scene where the group rushes into the elevator and then they wind up catching on fire and then the elevator
Oh
comes back
man.
up. You're just like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh! Like this guy just comes out of the umbrella, out of the elevator in flames, and he just falls down
Hmm.
dead on the floor in front of everybody. The scene where Robert Wagner's character Dan tries to run out to get help, and he just instantly catches flames. Like
Hmm.
that stuntman was on fire for a long time, and that scene was amazing looking. Like there's
Yeah.
just fire everywhere, and this guy's stumbling through, burning. It's so intense. There's a scene where we see poor Lori fall out of the elevator, and when she falls, you see her like hit the building and spin
And
in
then
the
spin.
air
Yeah.
while she's going down. I was just like, "Holy crap! This is
Yeah.
incredibly graphic. I didn't expect this.
Hmm.
Just amazing stuff."
Yeah. Now, I will say some of the stuntmen, it was clear that they were stuntmen
Oh
and
yeah,
they were wearing padding and they had the wax on and
and
all
there
that,
were
the flame
dummies and
retardant.
stuff too.
Yeah. So it wasn't a perfect home run, but they you can't I can't think of
I
another
mean,
way
that's
they
how
would
they
have
did
to
it
be able
back
to do
then.
that.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you can't literally throw a stuntman who's burning off the side of a building.
Yeah.
You gotta work with what you got, even
Yeah.
when what you got is millions of dollars.
So visual effects, chef's kiss, amazing. The fire effects alone are worth
Top
watching the
notch,
movie. Yeah.
amazing.
Score?
Wonderful. A little
Yeah.
dated now, but wonderful. It's. I'm not going to give it the amazing theme award because you could play the theme and I would just be like, oh, that's some nice '70s music. But it was good enough. I never really thought to myself, this music's great or this music's terrible. Um, it was just good. It fit the film. It worked okay. Um,
Yeah.
I had no issues with it.
I thought it was smartly used. Um, we open with this kind of upbeat, bombastic score of with
Bombastic.
yeah, Paul Newman riding his helicopter back from wherever he was at.
It's Mr. Paul
Um,
Newman. He's a helicopter going back to San Francisco.
all right,
It's bombastic.
cut that track and release it. It's done. Um, but then, as the movie progresses, we get more of this ominous score.
Hmm.
Uh, but I like that they used it smartly in that there wasn't music at all in some spots.
Yeah.
Uh,
I love it when
and
they do that.
yeah, you know, I think it was when Paul Newman was running down some stairs, which he does several times throughout the movie, but there was nothing playing. He was just running down the stairs.
Hmm.
And then whenever people were in peril or there was danger, that score would kind of build up and then become more prominent. But yeah, I thought it was good.
And something we
Who?
should note,
Yes, I was going to say, go ahead.
the music in this film was done by somebody most people would probably recognize when it comes to film music. Do you know who that
Yeah,
was, John?
I
You
didn't
should
until the
know.
credits rolled. Yep, I didn't until the credits rolled.
That's right. Mr. John Williams did this movie.
Yeah, it doesn't really sound like him.
Mm-mm.
Hmm. And
I
that's one of
think
the
this
reasons I
was
didn't.
pretty early in his career, wasn't it?
Yeah, this was pre Superman, pre Star Wars, so it might have been one of the first big movies he did. I'm not sure.
It definitely was. I'm looking it up now. This movie came out in '74, I
Hmm.
guess. Let me.
Yep.
I must be looking at the wrong category. Let me change this up. It says filmography soundtrack. Is he not credited for this film in IMDb?
Oh yeah, it was in the credits, so he had to be credited.
Well, no, on IMDb, I mean specifically, because I'm looking at 1974, and the only thing he's credited for in that year is the 46th Annual Academy Awards.
Um, I'm looking it up.
Oh, maybe composer. Maybe that's what I need to be looking at.
Yeah.
There we go. Yeah. So he did the Towering Inferno in '74. He had quite a bit under his belt by then, but I don't see a lot of big ones. Mostly TV, actually, at that point in his career. He did the test reel for Planet of the Apes, which is kind of interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think this is one of his first really big movies. This, and he did Earthquake at the same time as
That's
he did
funny.
this, which those
That's
movies,
pretty funny.
Earthquake, another famous '70s disaster movie that came out nearly the same time as The Towering Inferno did, and in fact, a lot of theaters showed them as double features back to back. And this was the year before he made one of, I guess, his first real famous score. He also did the Poseidon Adventure 2 years prior. It was just interesting too.
Crazy.
He's got all the big disaster movies under his
The
belt.
big three.
But he, 74, he did this. Do you know what movie came out in '75 that is to this day still iconic? Probably his first true iconic soundtrack.
75.
Yep, '75.
It wasn't Star Wars. It wasn't Superman. Um, wasn't Jaws?
It
Yeah,
was
Jaws.
Jaws. Good job, my friend. His first real iconic theme, in my opinion, Jaws. 2 years later,
Oh yeah.
Star Wars comes out, as well as Close Encounters. So, I mean, this really is right before John Williams became the John
Household
Williams.
name.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yep. He is definitely my favorite composer.
he's amazing.
There's
Everything he
no,
touches
I
is
mean,
gold.
no, there are others, but he's way ahead of the race.
Yeah.
Um, Anything that we didn't cover in any of the other categories that you want to mention? I have a few.
Let's see. We talked about the cast. There is one thing I wanted to talk about. That is the way this movie hits differently today than it did in the time it was made, which this was again 1974 when this movie premiered, and it's eerily prophetic. They mention in particular in the last scene when they're talking about Steve McQueen and Paul Newman are talking, and Steve McQueen's like, "When are they going to learn to ask us before you build them?" And he says, we lost like, I don't know what the body count was, like 137 people or something like that died today. He's like, if y'all don't start talking to us, one day it's going to be over 10,000.
Right.
And when he says that, just today, you get a chill because instantly you think to 9/11. And in
Yeah.
fact, this movie has a lot of eerie similarities. You've got a giant high rise where people are trapped on top floors. You've got people who are throwing themselves out of windows because they're on fire in this movie, but they're
Yeah.
they're
They're
trying to get
doing,
away from the heat.
yeah,
Um,
they're doing what they think they can do to get away. And
it's it definitely gives this movie a hard edge that it couldn't have had in '74, because most people nowadays, which we're getting a younger generation that's coming up that didn't witness this, but most adults nowadays can remember 9/11 happening. And a lot of us even remember seeing it on the news live. I know I do. I remember very clearly seeing that happen. And watching this movie after witnessing that really kind of brings a gravity to the film that I don't think it originally had without that. And it definitely can sober you up real quick watching this film, and it adds to the tension, I guess you could say.
yeah, yeah, for sure. I wasn't necessarily thinking about 9/11 while watching, but I could see where if you had that mindset going in, it would have been it would have had more impact. I got to be honest, some points I was laughing throughout the movie
There
because
was
it was
some
just,
silly parts for sure.
yeah. Um, but yeah,
I don't know. I feel like post 9/11, this movie hits a lot harder than it did before.
yeah. I mean, there was no big high-rise disaster of that magnitude until 9/11. I mean, it
There's
wasn't the same kind of disaster, but it was close enough that I could see the similarities, like you
there
said.
was one part where you see the fire chief Steve McQueen. He's talking to his fire guys, and he tells them to move the barricade for people back at least
Mhm.
4 blocks. As
Yeah,
soon as he said that, I was like, "Oh my gosh!" Because the building's gonna collapse, and I was just like, "Wow."
I actually kept waiting for that to happen,
Yeah.
but it did not. All right, well, my stuff isn't as prophetic as your statement, but this is where I put nitpicks
Hmm.
pretty much.
Well, I mean,
Um,
the movie was made before 9/11. They had no idea 9/11 was going to happen. I just wanted to note that watching it post 9/11 makes it hit a little bit harder than I think it used to. Not
yeah,
it has nothing to do with the movie other than there's similarities between the event and the film.
hmm, sure. Um, so it seems like everyone is able to freely move around the building except for the people that are required to die. Like Steve McQueen and Paul Newman are just going up and down stairs. They're using the elevator. Everything's fine. Um,
Well,
but
they
then
were
the
using
people,
some elevators, right?
yeah,
They had the lay of the land, and they were operating out of that command center, and they didn't
hmm,
move about easily. In fact, I think anytime Paul Newman went anywhere, it was a really big ordeal.
well, in some cases, but there were a lot of scenes where he was just going up and down the stairs.
Yeah.
But it wasn't that big of a deal. I just thought it interesting that they were able to move around. Um, the helicopter at the end of the movie that they were
Oof.
going to get on.
Yeah. Oof. I figured this was coming. Yeah, that
So
was rough.
they were only going to bring out 10 women uh, because women and children first. They come out on top of the roof. The helicopter's about to drop down, and two ladies come out and they start flailing their arms. And the helicopter makes a hard turn. I'm not sure what it hits, but whatever it hit, it exploded the helicopter.
Now wait,
And
the helicopter exploded? Because I thought I saw a cardboard box explode.
my eyes may have deceived me. Maybe it was a cardboard
That
box.
that was the one visual effect that looked pretty terrible. That helicopter blowing up, like you cut to right before it blows up, and it looks like somebody built a helicopter out of cardboard and then they blew it up. It looks awful.
Yeah, it didn't. I don't know. That was the most disappointing part because it's like, I get it. You want to kind of prevent the easy way out, but that helicopter shouldn't have blown up. It didn't hit any. I mean, even if it hit something, it would have spun instead of explode.
Yeah,
Like,
that didn't make a
I
lot
don't
of
know.
sense. And then,
Yeah.
well, now the roof's on fire. Can't go up there anymore.
Yeah. Yep, that avenue's blocked.
And they did try to sell it with it's too windy to land a helicopter, but they were going to try
mm,
anyway. But I don't know. I'm with you on that. That was kind of weak.
yeah.
Here's a nitpick for you.
Go ahead. Yeah.
O.J. Simpson's character was a big nitpick
hmm
for me. I got really invested in his character. I thought he was doing a great job acting, and his kind of security head, head of security, not security head, role was an interesting one to me because he wasn't a trained firefighter, but he felt responsibility to get people to safety.
hmm
We get a great scene where he goes to rescue the two kids and the deaf lady and Lori. Is it Lori? I think it's Lori.
Uh, yeah, I don't know.
The
Lisa Red or something.
Yeah, he goes to rescue them, and he does. And he gets in and he finds the deaf mother of the two kids unconscious on the bed. And so he scoops her up and he walks out. And then he decides he needs to check all of the rooms. And so he starts going room to room. And we see him find her cat. And he rescues her cat. And that's the last we see of him till the end of the movie. And so, like, for the entirety of the movie, and I was watching it with some friends, and I kept saying this. I was like, "What happened to OJ?" Like, you see the kids stuck with Paul Newman and Lottie or Lori. I need to look that up because I don't need to be saying that wrong over and over again.
Lisa Red, I think, is her. It's weird. It's a weird
Lisa
name.
Lett, was that her?
Lisa Let. Yeah.
Okay, for some reason I thought it was Lori by Susan Flannery, but regardless, that character. So it's her and the two girls and Paul Newman, and they go through this whole ordeal just to get back to the promenade. A couple floors over them, and we don't know what happened to OJ. We see him with the cat, and then he disappears. And I was just
hmm
like, what happened to him? Where's the mom? Where's the cat? Where did OJ go? Like, what's happened?
Yeah.
And we don't find out until pretty much the end of the movie when he's on the ground with the cat. That
Yeah.
really bothered me. I wanted to know his story. Like, what happened there?
I think he got the cat and got in his Ford Bronco and drove off.
If that's the case, it would have been on the news, I think.
Oh, yeah, it should have been on the news.
But anyway, that bothered
Anyway,
me because I got into that character and I wanted to see what happened. I wanted to see how that played out, and I felt robbed of that because we just have
yeah.
to assume. I guess he went down 145 flights of stairs carrying a lady, and then he later went down 140. He went back up and then went back down with the cat. I don't know.
Yeah. And the next time we see him, he still has the cat. So he's
Yeah,
been carrying this cat around for hours,
he gives it to
doing whatever.
Harley Claiborne, who is Fred Astaire. The cat being
Yep.
orphaned now, as poor either Lisa Lett or Lori falls to her death. I think you're right. I think it's Lisa Lett because Lori was the
He
the
was
girl
the
who
assistant.
blew up and jumped out the window.
Yeah. Uh, speaking of her, Robert Wagner's character, who was her love
Thank you,
interest,
J Rod.
was
J Rod pointed out it is Lisa Lit. Yeah.
yeah. Robert Wagner's character was a dummy. Uh, Telephones worked the whole time. Everything's burning and blowing
Yeah.
up, and the telephone lines are intact.
Yeah. Which, I mean, I think that would work. You didn't need power to have telephones then. They were separate lines.
Yeah, but there's fire everywhere in the walls. Like
Yeah.
it melts a RJ45 cable. You no longer have telephone service.
RJ45. Listen to him.
Yeah.
Simmons. I'm
Um.
Simmons over there. Uh, One thing I did want to point out, in case you're confused about that interesting, maybe not interesting, disaster movie of a opening that we did. Um, so you've got Lori and you've got her beau, who is Dan Bigelow, and they're having an affair. And he goes in to the office and tells everyone else to leave, and then he says, "I've got a letter. I need you immediately. It's got to go out tonight." And they go into the office and start getting all makey outy. In fact, a lot of people get really makey outy in this movie, but
hmm.
he decides that he doesn't want to be disturbed. He wants it to be secret. And so before he goes in there, he has all of the phones on that floor disabled so that nobody can call and find him. And that's why he gets stuck in that room with her, because the fire spreads to that office and he can't call out because he shut off the phones. And I thought that was awfully odd. And then, of course, he pretends to call the fire department, but he doesn't. He does it just to keep his lady calm.
Hmm.
But the first time he looks out and sees the office on fire, he might have had a chance to get out then. But instead, he
Yeah.
just closes the door and pretends like everything's fine. And then later, when he does open
That's
the door, it's just not good.
that's why I said he was a dummy because they had a better opportunity to leave when he saw the fire the first time.
Yeah.
Then they wait. Then he's like, I ran 110 minutes. And then he runs outside.
And all
He
he does is
touches
put a
the
wet
fire.
towel on his head. I was like, get in the shower and get your whole suit wet or something, right? Like,
Yeah, within seconds he's in
yeah, he
flames.
makes it like 3 steps before he's completely engulfed.
It was bad. Um, so the only other thing was they don't really show how the people in the promenade get down after after the fires extinguished.
Yes.
I would like to have known because they made a explicit mention that the stairwell was destroyed, the elevators aren't working, so
Yeah.
I don't
No,
know.
no clue. Elevators are
Yeah,
broke. Simmons made sure that chair was gone
yeah,
because he rushed it with some other goons, and they wound up breaking the rope, and it fell down and crashed. They
yeah.
managed to put the fire out, but everybody's still up there and can't get down. It's a pretty legitimate question.
Because reasons, and because the
Probably
movie
because
was
the
already
reason.
2 hours and 45 minutes,
I think that's
and
the
they,
reason there. Yeah. Nobody really cared about watching them have to rappel with firemen teaching them how to do it and all that kind of thing. I'm
yeah,
assuming that's how they did it. They got ropes and volunteers and they helped them get down with,
hmm,
rappelling and such.
yeah, and
Either
that's a
that or they
nitpick.
fixed the
Like,
power somehow.
yeah, it's a nitpick. Like, I'm just curious, but if they had actually filmed all that, I would have been like, oh, we
I
don't
mean,
need
it's a
to see
legitimate
this.
concern because, I
Yeah,
mean, they're down on the ground the same night that they put the fire out, and you would think it would take hours, if not days, to get them down.
yeah. All right. Uh, Overall thoughts and then star rating,
Okay.
Matt.
So I am an absolute sucker for disaster movies. That needs to be said before I give my star rating. I eat them up. I love them, and I don't really know why. I guess it's the blend of action and seeing, in most cases, for the most part, everyday people dealing with things that are actually could be a threat. I like the survival aspect of it, maybe combined with the action and the drama. So I love them. I watch a lot of them. Any chance I get, I'll watch them. And most of the time, I even like the bad ones. So, I mean, you give me a rock disaster movie, I'm going to be like, let's go. Let's watch it.
Mm.
That said, I've seen a fair share of them, and this is without question one of the best I've ever seen. It's believable. Nobody's doing Superman stuff here. Everything they do is believable, although, they make some stupid moves, but even that's believable because honestly, people can be pretty stupid.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of Superman stuff, like when they hook the elevator up to the helicopter and fly it down to the ground, stuff like that, but that's nitpicky, especially in these type of movies where we tend to get a little comic booky occasionally. So I forgive that, even though for the most part I felt like this was a pretty realistic thing. Um, Man, when the fire starts in earnest, which happens like John said about 30 minutes into the film, the tension cranks and it keeps going. From that point forward, I could not look away from the screen. I was completely enthralled in this film. Every part of it I loved. There, like I said, there were here and there were little nitpicks, but for the most part, I was completely engrossed in this, and I was blown away that I was watching an older movie that came out in 1974, and that I was seeing the things that I was seeing. High marks all around. I've got to come in high on this. I'm going to give this one a 8, I think. Although I'm tempted to roll it up to a 9, I'm going to come in with a solid 8.
Okay. That's a good score.
Almost a 9.
Um,
Like it's like a
yeah,
8.4.
8.479.
And
Um,
I'm really fighting a battle too because I keep thinking, no, this movie's a solid 9. I should give this a 9. And then I'm like, no, it's not quite a 9, but it's an 8. It's an 8. So I'm going to round down and I'm going to go with the 8. But I want to make it clear that this is really good and it's potentially a 9. And if you like disaster films, really solid action films, firefighter movies, any of that, freaking go watch this because it's incredible.
I generally agree. I thought this was a really fun movie. Um, really good disaster movie. It's not the best disaster movie I've ever seen, but it's up there. It's definitely in my top three, top five, for sure. Uh, the dings for it is it's really long, so it's not a
Mm-hmm.
movie you can really sit down and digest. You have to carve out some time to watch this movie. Um, and it starts slow, which I said before, it's not a bad thing, but you that darn fire just doesn't get going as quickly as you'd want it
So,
to.
what you're telling me is that this movie's a little bit of a slow burn.
Yes.
I'm on fire tonight. What can I say?
Yeah. You're an inferno of jokes. Um, but the performances make up for it, the score, the action, uh, all the scenes that we mentioned, just ratcheting up that tension. The fire special effects are bar none. Like there's only a few other movies I can think of, maybe one other movie I can think of that has those kind of fire effects. Um, Paul Newman and Steve McQueen are legendary actors in their prime, or maybe a little over their prime, but they're still amazing. The chemistry between them is great. I love all the different romance angles that they hit on that attach you to these characters and make you feel for them. Um, the set design and the scale at which they shot this glass tower, it makes you feel like it's this huge tower. They they slowly show you the floor numbers, and they start with like 80, and then they're going up, and they're like at 130. And you're like, what's the top floor on this thing?
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, oh, okay, it's 130. and then they go to 135, and then you're like, is it 135? And then they're at 137, and I think the last number I saw was 137, but it's a very, very big building, and they
Mm-hmm.
do a good job of representing that scale. Um, so overall, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really well made movie. It's not a perfect movie. Um, and I don't think I liked it as much as you did, Matt, but I'll give it a 7 out of 10.
All right, an 8 and a 7. That's pretty solid scores.
Yeah, it's a good movie. Highly recommended.
This is definitely a movie I could watch again too. This isn't
Yeah.
a one and done. This movie's great, and I highly recommend it. If you haven't seen it, I really really hope you check it out because it's. I hadn't seen it prior to this viewing, and I've heard good things about it, but I hadn't seen it. And a lot of why I hadn't seen it is I tended, and this is embarrassing to admit, but the fact that it was made in the 70s, I was like, this movie's going to be corny and I'm not going to like it. And I'm just, meh, I shouldn't watch it. And the title's not great. I mean, the Towering Inferno, it's kind of a lame name, if we're being honest. And
Right.
so I just had been writing it off. But when I looked at the cast and I saw the cast in it and I had heard people talk about it in a positive light, I was like, I've got to see it. And man, if you're in that place where I was, take the plunge and watch this movie because it's great.
Yeah. Really, the only barrier to entry really is the runtime.
Hmm.
Like you've got to be able to carve out about 3 hours to watch the movie, but it's worth it.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, let's do some Spice Awards. We have four categories: Best Actor, Most Underrated Performance, Favorite Scene, and Most Thrilling Moment. Best Actor, you can't say tie.
I mean, let's be honest here, though. You say I can't say a tie, but it's a toss up between our two of the three leading actors.
Uh-huh.
William Holden did amazing, but Paul Newman and Steve McQueen just take over. They're great. They're moving around. They've got all kinds of action scenes. They're dramatic. They're working so well together. It's so hard to choose between the two of them. If I have to pick one, it's going to be Steve McQueen.
Hmm.
He plays Chief O'Halloran, the fire chief. He doesn't even show up until about an hour into the movie or so, 30 minutes to an hour into the movie. But once he shows up, he's so interesting to watch. He's in the middle of this just disaster that's playing out, and he never loses his cool. He's always calculated. He's always like cool in his decision making. He doesn't care who you are. Like he doesn't care if you're the builder of the building or the mayor or a janitor. Like he's in charge and you're going to do what he says, and he's not putting up with your business. And if you've got a question, he's just going to tell you this is why. The scene where OJ's character is like, why do you want a tenant list? And he's like, oh, you got any sporting goods vendors? Well, those balls give off this kind of gas. He's like, you got any carpet or rug vendors up there? Well, this is why. And the guy's like, OJ's just like, oh, I'll get you a tenant list coming right up. And he does that throughout the movie. No matter what happens, he keeps this attitude. And you can tell by the way he acts and just observing the character that he is dog tired. There's a scene where he's just laying up against the wall and he looks half dead. And then someone's like, someone wants to talk to you. It's the Navy. And he's like, all right, let's go. And he just gets up and goes back to work. Man, like the character was awesome. The acting was amazing. And while Newman was just as good, I've got to give McQueen the edge just because I loved the way he played that kind of, this sucks, but this is my job. Let's get it done kind of character.
Yeah. And I wanted to bring this up before, but I forgot. But the way they portray firemen is a very, like we said, it's a dedication to firemen, but that confidence and that just they were trained to do this. They're just going to do what they were trained to do. There's no bias. There's no politics. They're just there to do the job and get it done and save lives. And
Yeah.
this movie does a great job of representing that.
Absolutely.
Um, I also had a hard choice between Paul Newman and Steve McQueen.
Hmm.
Um, I ultimately gave it to Paul Newman. He had more screen time.
That's true. He did.
Uh, he was he was there more, and so that's kind of what gave him the edge for me. And his role was more physical.
That's true.
Steve McQueen was he had a great acting role, but Paul Newman had the acting role, and he had this physicality that uh, Steve McQueen didn't seem to have, and I don't know why that was.
Well, he had a lot of
Uh,
scenes like that, but they weren't as strictly physical, right? Like his were
right.
more stunts. Like, he runs through the fire and holds up the flaming door, or he clips onto the helicopter and climbs onto the elevator and holds the guy while they're going down to the ground. But,
Yeah.
when you're looking at that on screen, he's not climbing through holes in the roof or, climbing with little girls on their back down broken stairs. So I
Yeah.
get what you're saying.
Yeah. His action or physicality was more apparent, more please eye catching, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, but
Honestly, it was
besides
more
that,
physical. I mean,
yeah.
he's doing more physical stuff, even though McQueen's doing physical stuff. It's, if you think about it, like the helicopter scene, he's just standing on a ball while he's clipped into a cable, whereas, Newman is actually climbing through holes and hanging on bars and stuff.
Um, but besides that, Paul Newman, he played this confident architect. He he takes responsibility for his what he considers his uh his responsibility for his creations, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So he made the blueprints for this building, and he built them such that they were above code in every aspect. And so when some idiot comes in and cuts corners, he now feels responsible even though he wasn't the one that did it. And that I thought that was an admirable take that they put to that character. He felt like he needed to help out with everybody, just like Steve McQueen. He needed to save lives because he felt personally responsible for the events that were happening, and he even mentions that in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I just like Paul Newman. Like he's been in so many movies that I've enjoyed, like Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid, The Color of Money. All these movies, he's just wonderful to watch. So
Newman.
so he gets an edge over Steve McQueen in my book.
He does have pretty good salad dressing.
He does Newman's Own.
So, he gets points for
Yeah,
that.
yeah. His face is on the package. All right, best actor for me it was Paul Newman who played Doug Roberts, and Matt's pick was Steve McQueen who played Chief O'Halloran. Most underrated performance.
So, for this one, I do have an honorable mention. As is tradition, I'm going to wait until you give yours just in case we've got the same one.
Okay.
But my actual pick is definitely got to be William Holden as Jim Duncan. He plays the builder of the place, and at first he kind of plays out as being this kind of Weasley, no good, kind of bad guy character. He wanted to cut the corners. He when the fire chief is like, we've got to evacuate, he's like, no, that's ridiculous. That's floors below us. There's no way that fire could get to us. We're keeping everybody up here. He's real reluctant to do anything to react to that fire, and you could argue that that's a lot of why so many people were hurt and killed. But
Hmm.
at the same time, you have to respect him because he refused to leave that building until everybody else had. He owned up to it. He took responsibility for it. And I felt like the acting on that role was just on point. You know, at first you're just like, come on, dude, I'm going to punch you in the face. I need you to get this ball moving. But at the end of it, I was like, man, you're pretty all right. You know, maybe you should have done this, but you know, nobody can argue that you're not a man of your word, or that you're not doing what you think's best. And he played that role so well that I have to mention him. And it's kind of marginal saying, you know, William Holden is underrated, because he's, you know, another very, very famous actor. In fact, he shares top billing in this film with Steve McQueen and Paul Newman. But um, I've got to call out his performance, because it was awesome.
Yeah. I didn't pick him, but I agree with you. Like, he's this character that you don't know what you don't know, and he thought there was or he was told there was a fire, but he doesn't know the gravity of the fire.
Right.
And this is his baby. This is his building that he just unveiled. He's got all these people here. If he doesn't have to go downstairs, he's not going to.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and then once he figures out the gravity of the situation, he's he takes responsibility. He's there to help. He's very angry at his uh nephew, or not nephew, son-in-law.
Son-in-law. Yeah.
Yep. So I think there was some implication that maybe he told his son-in-law to cut corners, which adds a little more to his being despicable. But he's a businessman.
Well, and I think when he told him to cut corners, I think it was assumed that he would, you know, cut corners but keep everything safe. And
Yeah.
and that's where the discrepancy happened, because he cut corners and made things unsafe.
Yeah. Yeah. I picked, and I alluded to this before, but I picked Felton Perry as
Mm.
Scott. And he was the fireman that was in the promenade at the end of the movie, helping out with the breaches buoy and making sure that was all secure, and helping out with keeping people calm in the promenade. But he is this character actor that has been in RoboCop and various other movies. But in this movie in particular, he plays the role of a fireman almost, like, in my mind, perfectly. You never see him nervous. You never see him scared. He's there. He's a rock. Like, he's there to make sure he's doing his job and keeping people calm by not freaking out. And the only time we really see a hint of nervousness in his face is when he's tied to a pillar at the end of the movie and the water's about to come down. He has kind of a nervous look. He's looking at Steve McQueen's character, in kind of a knowing exchange, like this could be
Mm-hmm.
the last of our lives, you know. But I really liked what he did, and he doesn't get enough credit as an actor in general. But I think he was really good in this movie.
You know, to add to what you're saying there, when Steve McQueen rigs the gravity, gravity brake on the elevator, he's able to let a group of people go down in the elevator, and so
Mm-hmm.
they evacuate women and kids, and then they send a firefighter down with them, so that they would have one with them in case anything goes crazy, which thankfully they do, because spoilers, it does. But
Yep.
I think we're going to get to that. The what that means, there were only two firefighters in the promenade in the beginning anyway, and so once that other firefighter leaves, that means that your boy was alone with a panicked group of the upper crust in this building all by himself. And so he's doing this with no backup. It's just him up there. And there was a scene near the end, right before he ties himself in, and I remember seeing this and thinking, wow, that's amazing. Everybody's tying themselves down. They know what's going to happen. They've radioed up that they're going to blow the water tanks above them. And there's fire in the room, and he's over there fighting the fire. He's got a hose hooked up to the water system, and he's just spraying that fire down. Everybody's panicking and tying themselves in and getting ready for the worst, and he's still over there just doing his job. And
Yep.
man, respect for that.
Mm-hmm.
It gave me chills, honestly, because he's just
Yeah.
over there doing what he can, you know.
Yeah, for sure. Alrighty. Most underrated performance for me, Felton Perry as Scott. Matt's pick was William Holden, who played Duncan. What's his last? Jim Duncan.
Jim Duncan. That's right. And I do want to mention one honorable mention.
Oh yeah, your honorable mention.
This was a character that I felt drawn to right from the beginning, and I liked it every scene he was in. And that was Gregory Sierra, who played Carlos, the bartender in The Promenade. He was an
Okay.
extremely likable character to me. He's got this fine bottle of wine, this crate of this really expensive fine wine hidden behind the bar, and he gets so
Hmm.
delighted when he takes it out and shows it to the mayor. And later, when he's tying himself down, he's got that bottle, and he's like trying to protect that crate because he knows it's valuable, and he's dedicated to his job, I guess. On top of
Yeah.
that, when the kids wind up in the promenade, he makes them like milkshakes and finds some cookies and puts them on a plate and tries to calm them down. And I don't know, I found that character really endearing, and I
Hmm.
was really cheering hard for him. Unfortunately, he didn't make it through. A giant
Ugh.
statue falls on him and kills him. But
While he's under the bar, like
I know.
you'd think he's in one of the safest places ever.
I figured the least I can do is mention him in the CinemaMen podcast because you did good, Carlos. We were cheering
Rest in
for you,
peace.
man.
Rest in peace. All right. Favorite scene?
Favorite scene. So another tough one here. There's so many good scenes. These last two categories are going to be particularly hard for me. The one that I wound up choosing was the elevator rescue.
Mm.
So the elevator that is fixed, that they send the firemen and the women and children down in, it winds up getting blown off of its tracks by an explosion as it's going down. And when it goes off the tracks, it's just hanging from a cable, just dangling in open space. And this is an exterior glass elevator, so it's just literally wobbling on the side of the building. Steve McQueen figures out a plan where he's going to get a helicopter with a big hook, and he's going to hop onto that elevator, and he's going to hook the elevator to the helicopter, and he's going to cut the cable, and they're going to land it with the helicopter. That scene was so intense. It's sorry. He gets on the helicopter. The other firefighter climbs up, and they're just holding on to nothing, balancing on this swinging elevator, trying to cut the cable and hook everything up. And the whole time, I'm just sitting there holding my breath, like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. There's kids and ladies, and the glass is broken. And they managed to save the elevator, but man alive, that scene was amazing. And while I was tempted to say the final scene where the water blows and you see the water and the fire, but that I have to admit that's purely for the special effects and the visuals of it. This
Mhm.
scene, I was just, man, it's one of the tensest I've ever been watching a movie, and it was incredible. So I've got to give it
Yeah.
to that one.
Yeah, for sure. Spoilers, that's my most thrilling moment.
Mm,
Um, and yeah, it it adds to the fact that um you think they're gonna be safe because they set it up to where they're the ones getting down. The ones in the promenade are still up there. You're thinking, oh, they're not gonna make it.
right.
But then the elevator explodes or something explodes next to the elevator and this thing is hanging on by a thread by one cable and
This is
I
when we
think
lose poor Lisa Latte. She saves the little girl, but she falls out of the window or out of the elevator to
yeah,
her death.
which that was also a blow because you think she's gonna eat it when she's trying to scale down that metal concoction with Paul Newman and they all make it and then
Hmm.
she ends up going down in
They
the
tease you
elevator.
too because they save her cat, and you think, well, they're saving the cat. She's gonna make it because they're gonna reunite her with the cat at the end. But mm-mm.
Yeah. I maybe I have been, but I that was one of the most suspenseful thing, at least
Oh
in a long
man,
time.
no doubt.
Like I was glued to my seat in that, and I was leaning forward, and when I lean forward, I that's when I know that I'm into a movie because usually I'm reclining back, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it it was just great, and the way they resolve it it was kind of fantastical, but it also made sense. Like you could see how they got to that
Yeah,
conclusion, and
I mean, you could nitpick that scene pretty hard if you wanted to. For
yeah,
one, I don't think there's any way the helicopter could have gotten close enough to get him on that elevator without swinging.
hmm yeah,
Another one is whenever they cut the actual cable to the elevator stays exactly where it
it
is.
doesn't move.
It
Yeah,
would
I noticed.
definitely swing out when that happened,
Yeah,
and
hmm
so there's nitpicks, but for the most part, you're so just trained in on this scene that you don't even care, you know.
yep, yeah, for sure. But it was my most thrilling moment for sure, and your favorite scene.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my favorite scene was so my favorite scene is that scene. But I didn't want to pick the same scene for two categories, so I
Right.
picked another one, and that was my second favorite scene, which was when Paul Newman is helping Lizelette and the two kids down the metal.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what it's a guardrail or something that has warped and twisted from an explosion, and they're trying to get down it and to the most secure floor. And he goes he rolls down it like he gets thrown onto it and he's about to just fall into the depths, and somehow he manages to catch himself and get get on secure flooring. And then he's got this kid that's trying to come down by himself, which he makes it, but the whole time you're like he's gonna fall. Then he's got to go up and get the little girl and use she's got to piggyback onto him, and he's got to go back down, and then the old lady has to go down. And
Mm-hmm.
the whole time you're just like, what's going to happen? Like you're thinking one of these people is going to end up falling to their death, but they all make it, thankfully. But
Well,
it's
spoiler alert. That's my most thrilling moment.
awesome.
Although I have others, so I can pick another one quickly.
Oh, whatever. If you want to talk more about that scene, or you can pick another one. It's whatever.
No, I agree with you completely, man. In particular, when the little boy, he's like, "I think I can make it," and he starts climbing down. Oh my gosh! Like my breath was held the whole time. All I could imagine was if I was, Laura Lotta or whatever her name is, and that's my son trying to climb
Yeah.
down. And I was just like, I would like, oh my gosh, I can't imagine. What can you do? There's nothing. I mean, you
Yeah.
could try to help him down, but that's would probably be more in the way. On
Mm-hmm.
top of that, you're
But
worried about weight, and so you don't want to put extra weight on that stuff. It was just, man, it was so intense.
yeah, and that's Paul Newman said. He's like, this is it. Like you gotta try,
Mm-hmm.
otherwise you're gonna burn to death.
Yep.
Yeah,
It was super tense and a super well done scene. Loved it. Absolutely loved it.
yeah. So do you want to keep that as your most thrilling moment too?
Well, I'll say with the most thrilling moment, this was my hardest choice because, honest to goodness, once the fire starts, you could pick just about any scene and say it's the most thrilling moment. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
every freaking scene is intense and action filled and just, man, it's super intense.
Mm-hmm.
There's the children rescue, which is the one I wound up picking. There's when they blow the water tower above them, or the water tanks, and everybody's strapped in knowing that this could be their last moment on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
There's the when the elevator is going down and the explosion happens and it rocks and comes off its tracks and the glass breaks and everyone's trying to hold on. There's the scene where the elevator comes back up to the promenade and the people who didn't listen are all on fire and dying in the elevator. The
Mm-hmm.
helicopter rescue. There's the scene where Lori and Robert Wagner's character die in the fire. There's the scene where they're climbing the stairs and they blow up. There's the scene where they're saving the deaf lady and the kids Anytime Paul Newman goes from one place to another, you've got an intense scene coming up.
Hmm.
It's really hard to choose one. Like there's just so many. And so, while I agree with you on the children rescue thing, it's, man, it's just a laundry list of super intense, super thrilling movie.
Yeah. No, yeah, you're right. There's no shortage of choices. But that speaks to the movie and
Yeah.
how suspenseful it was. All right. So you're good?
I'm good. I'll add
Okay.
one more to that laundry list though, and that's
Okay.
when the lady gets on that chair, the first one, and they start wheeling her across to the other
Oh
building.
yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's so tense! Like she's in
Yeah.
basically like a garden chair with a cage around it, and it's not even a cage; it's just bars that she can hold on to.
Hmm.
Completely open air, nothing but a seatbelt around her, and she's just the wind is just blowing her every which way, and like I can't imagine what that would be like having to go between buildings like that.
Yeah. And she was the first one. Like,
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't you hate to be the first person to have to get on that thing?
Like, geez, I hope this rope was tied well.
Yeah. Uh, all right. Hey Matt,
Hey, John.
did you know that after seeing this film, novelist Roderick Thorpe had a dream the same night about a man being chased through a skyscraper by gun-wielding assailants? This was the inspiration for the 1979 book Nothing Lasts Forever, which eventually was made into the film Die Hard. Little known film.
That's interesting. This movie probably has a lot of ramifications throughout modern cinema. Cinema. Yeah,
Yeah,
cinema. I like cinema and film
it's like a cat and gurgle.
movies. Here's one. You had mentioned if there were real firefighters or not. Like I
Yep.
said, there were. In fact, there were over 1,000 real firefighters hired for this film throughout the entire production of it. From being extras in scenes to technical advisors to all kinds of things. So,
Hmm.
yes, they were involved. Over 1,000 of them.
Wow. Steve McQueen uh, tragically passed away about 6 years after this movie released. He developed a persistent cough in 1978 and underwent some treatments. And in 1979, they revealed that he had pleural mesothelioma, which is a cancer associated with asbestos exposure for
Mm.
which there is no known cure. Uh, Apparently, he was exposed to this asbestos in it was used in movie soundstage insulation and race drivers' protective suits uh, when he was some of his earlier works.
Hmm.
So,
The scene where he comes down onto the roof. There's a scene where he rappels off of the helicopter onto the roof of the building and lands in the midst of a bunch of fire. Uh, he actually did that scene. That was not a stuntman. That was Steve McQueen doing all of that. Uh, Irwin Allen, our infamous, or not infamous, our famous disaster movie director, uh, strongly objected to him doing this, but he insisted on doing it. And so when you see that scene, that's actually him, literally on a helicopter dropping down onto a set, but dropping down onto a flaming set.
there, there was much consternation in Steve McQueen's camp when it was discovered that Paul Newman had 12 more lines of dialogue than he did.
Yeah, there are a bunch of egos on this film for sure.
Yeah.
I think they worked together well, but there were still no shortage of egos here. I mean, when you get the best in Hollywood all together, that happens. To that, Bill Holden or William Holden, he demanded that he would be first billed on this film. However, at this point, his career had kind of been going downhill. He wasn't as famous then as he was in his prime, and therefore the decision was made for him to be billed after Steve McQueen and Paul Newman.
Hmm. I think you mentioned this somewhat early on, but there were 57 sets built for the production, and only 8 remained standing when the
Yeah,
filming ended.
I think I said 2, but yeah, most of the sets were destroyed. It's really interesting.
Hmm.
So here, this is interesting. This is something you don't see every day with a film. This movie was the very first movie to be jointly produced by 2 major film studios. Those studios were Warner Brothers and 20th Century Fox. They teamed up to co-fund the film, co-release the movie, essentially co-produce it, and then at the end they took a split right down the middle of the profits each studio.
Hmm. Supposedly, Paul Newman later regretted his decision to co-star with Steve McQueen because of the rivalry between the two, created by Steve. As a result, the fireman role dominates Newman's architect. 3 contributing factors are both characters have the same number of lines at McQueen's insistence. McQueen's character doesn't appear until 43 minutes into the film. As a result, Newman had used almost half of his lines before McQueen enters. And number 3, the fire chief is the authoritative hero who outranks and captures center stage over all other characters. During filming, Newman was quoted as saying, "For the first time, I fell for the goddamn numbers. I did this turkey for $1 million and 10% of the gross, but it's the first and last time, I swear." He later collaborated with Irwin Allen on When Time Ran Out, 1980.
So Steve McQueen originally was going to be cast as the architect, and he decided he wanted to be the fire chief. When he said that he would be the fire chief, though, he said that he would do that if they can get someone of his caliber to co-star, which is what led to Paul Newman being hired. That said, he did have a few suggestions for who could be in that role. And he mentioned, and I think any one of these would have been good, but I'm glad they went with Paul Newman. He mentioned Clint Eastwood. He mentioned Jack Nicholson. And he mentioned Robert Redford.
All would have been good.
I agree.
Mm. Paul Newman and Steve McQueen were paid the same amount of money, $1 million and 10% of the box office each. And I think the budget was 13 million or something.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the budget was. I know that domestically it cleared over 100 million.
Good. That's a good take. Yeah, $14 million budget.
Not bad to make 100 million domestically alone on 14 million.
Yeah. Total box office take was $203.3 million.
Woo! They cleaned up. My goodness. This movie did well at the Oscars. It won 3 Academy Awards. One for Best Film Editing, one for Best Song, which was May We Never Lose Love Again. That was the song that was played in the party where we were talking about A Candle in the Night earlier. And it won for Best Supporting Actor. Oh, no, I'm sorry, it didn't win for that. Best Cinematography, Best Film Editing, and Best Song. Those were the 3 that it won for. It was nominated, though, for Best Picture. And it was also nominated for Best Supporting Actor, Fred Astaire receiving that nomination.
Wow.
It was also nominated for art direction, and it was also nominated for music. So this
Big
did
movie.
very well. That's a lot of nominations and 3 wins.
Hmm. The Towering Inferno has a 70% Rotten Tomato score from critics, and it has a 71% audience score with over 25,000 ratings.
This movie is the only movie in which Fred Astaire was nominated for an Oscar, which is kind of crazy. But
I
oddly enough, it's not a musical, which is what Fred Astaire was known for.
Yeah. His movies weren't typically Oscar worthy,
I suppose
as
not.
they say. At first, Irwin Allen didn't want to use music during the first 5 minutes of the helicopter sequence. John Williams told Allen that he could come up with 5 minutes of music for the beginning. When Allen heard it, he agreed with Williams.
Hmm. Uh, Before Steve McQueen was brought on for the role, there were a couple of actors considered to play the fire chief, Chief O'Halloran. Among those, we have Sean Connery, we have Rod Taylor, and we have Charlton Heston. Charlton Heston, in particular, I think would have been interesting in that role.
Get that damn fire out, you damn fireman. Steve McQueen's primary concern when filming was that his fireman's helmet made him look like an idiot.
Hmm. You know, the boy that we kept talking about climbing down during that tense stairs scene, that was played by Mike Lookinland, who most of our listeners probably would recognize, not by name necessarily, but by sight, because he played Bobby Brady in the Brady Bunch. On top of that, the Mayor Ramsey, who was played by Jack Collins. Jack Collins
Hmm?
also was in the Brady Bunch. He played Mike Brady's boss, Mr. Phillips.
Ah, yeah. I knew I recognized him from somewhere. William Holden didn't have a lot to say about this movie. He complained about his part and said he spent all of his time talking on the phone, and he also has referred to the film as lousy.
It's too bad because I thought he did great in it.
Yeah,
So we
but
mentioned earlier. Oh, go ahead.
it's probably because he didn't get top bill.
Yeah,
Is what I
he's
was gonna
probably a
say.
little sour about that. We mentioned earlier how this movie hits a little bit different after watching the events of 9/11 unfold.
Mhm.
Uh, and an interesting connection to that, the two novels that this movie was inspired by, one's called The Glass Tower and the other one's called The Tower. Both of those books were inspired by the erection of the World Trade Center buildings. So when those big, massive buildings were built, the tallest buildings in the world at the time, people looked at them and were like, "Man, what would happen if somebody got trapped on top of a fire in those buildings?" And they wrote books about them. Those books became this movie, and then unfortunately, reality imitated art in this case.
Yeah. Got any more?
I think that's enough. This is
Yeah,
another one of those movies where there's lots of information out there. So, as
yeah.
always, if you're interested in more information, a quick Google search will bring you all kinds of info about this film.
Indeed, and as always, we will have the link posted in the show notes. All right, that's going to be our episode for tonight. Join us in 2 weeks when we will review the 1961 samurai film Yojimbo, directed by Akira Kurosawa, starring Toshiro Mifune.
You know, our last samurai movie that we did was my one and only 10. So I'm looking
That's
forward
right.
to this one.
The reason I picked this is I'm expecting you to provide us another 10 out of 10 score.
We'll see. We'll see. It's got a tall wall to climb if it's going to be up there with Harakiri.
Yeah. We would love it if you'd subscribe to the CinemaMen podcast and leave us a review. Head on over to cinemamenpodcast.com to check out new and old episodes. We love to hear from listeners, so if you have a suggestion or just want to give us your take on a movie, you can email us at feedback@cinemamenpodcast.com or check us out on Twitter at twitter.com/cinemamenpod. But thanks for listening.
Thank you. All right. Let me get this audio preserved. Would you be mad if I told you I was not recording?
I mean, we've done it before.
I've done it before. Thankfully, I was recording. So for those of you tuned in still to the live show, we're going to be doing a Cinemini now coming up. We've just got to get everything switched over and get our files saved and uploaded and set up. That usually takes us about 10 or 15 minutes. And then we'll transition right into our Cinemini discussion, which tonight is going to be about disaster movies.
Yeah.
If you're curious what a Cinemini is, it's a 30-minute or less podcast, unedited. We might fix minor sound blemishes or something like that, but for the most part, that's it. We're not going to do any cuts. We're not going to do any edits, anything like that. It's just us talking about topics that aren't necessarily a direct movie review. So feel free to join us for that. If you don't feel like sticking around, we want to say thanks for watching us so far. We're really grateful for everybody who's tuned in and has watched us tonight.
Thanks for watching us so far.
So while we're setting everything up, John has gratefully agreed to do a little song and dance number for us. So, John, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you now.
Yeah. I'll not do a song and dance. And you can't make me.
He's changed his mind.
I know I said I'd do it, but I was drunk at the time. We can go ahead and reveal the topic, and we're going to talk about our favorite disaster movies.
Mm-hmm.
So if any of you have any ideas for what your favorite disaster movies are, feel free to respond in the chat.
Always good to hear that.
I picked a couple. It looks like you have several.
There's so many good ones, man. There's so many.
Yeah.
But like I said, I'm a sucker for disaster movies.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I am uploading my audio file. Restarting my Audacity. Excuse me. Hitting record. I am recording a new audio file. Oh, there's a xenomorph. Just walking along there, saying hi. We go ahead and turn off our graphics because we don't need those now. And we're stalling on this upload for some reason. It says it's stuck with 2 minutes left. I'm going to cancel it and retry it. Shop
Give me
smart.
some sugar, baby.
Yeah, for some reason this upload's not wanting to move. I guess we can work on that later. I do have it saved to
Yeah,
my hard drive, so I'm good there. It's just not uploading to our shared file.
that's all right. As long as you have it.
Okay. I'm wondering if maybe you're running into space issues.
I hope not. I pay for several terabytes.
Several terabytes. Good heavens. You should be good.
Yeah, that should be good.
All right, I don't know. I don't
Zero
know what the
less.
issue is, but we can stop stalling and I can worry about that problem after the fact. Oh, it looks like I'm having internet issues, maybe. Am I coming through clear to you?
Mm-hmm. So far.
All right, I'm going to cancel my upload. See if that fixes my issues.
Yeah.
All right. Why don't we go ahead and get going? Because we're delaying, even though for some reason my bitrate is dropping. I'm hoping it's due to that
Yeah,
upload.
you were a little choppy there just now.
Yeah, let me see if this will come back. Looks like the live feed has got some issues. Now it's coming back. All right, I've got excellent connection again. Let me make sure that my broadcasting software is syncing back up. For those of you who are watching, sorry about the issues. We're having a little internet hiccup over here. Hopefully we'll get that smoothed out pretty quick. I don't know what the issue is. I'm not uploading anything. Maybe something started downloading in the background. I'm just going to exit out of every application I don't need. All right, for those of you who are watching, what I think I'm going... Oh, nope, it's coming back now, maybe. No. It'll get good for a minute, and then it'll drop back down. Okay, here's what I'm going to try. I am going to try to restart the stream. So if you're watching this live, what's going to happen is you're going to see the stream end. If you would, just hang out on our website, take a look, maybe go to your main. If you're following us, you should see us on your main screen.